Welcome, everybody. Brother Dan Goodwin here. You know what? It's all about a kingdom, isn't it? I wrote a book here called The Kingdoms of Our Lord. If you don't have that yet, you ought to go to the website and get that thing. It's 34 pages, 36 pages, something like that. It really is all about a kingdom. And let me read something for you here. It began with a kingdom, and it will end with a kingdom. It began with a kingdom that God gave to Adam. Man's been fighting over that kingdom for centuries. And it's going to end with a kingdom, the Antichrist Kingdom, and then, of course, Christ comes on the white horse and sets up the kingdom, all right? See, that's what's going on today. I have Doc in the studio, and in today's program, we're going to talk about the kingdom, but we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about the roads of prophecy, all converging as we head into the last days. Stay tuned. And welcome, Brother Dan Goodwin here, crossing the spotlight. Dr. Charles Hiltibidal, my partner here on the show. And Doc, this is a brief outline that you handed to me recently, and very interesting. And I said, hey, we ought to use that. I think this would help people. Kind of goes along with this thing about the kingdom. The kingdom. Because, I mean, look at what's going on with Russia right now, and the Ukraine, all this stuff. They're
expanding their kingdom.
They're after some more kingdom. And America,
I think they're putting one back together is really what they're
exactly.
doing.
Yeah. They're reclaiming.
Some
old footage that they used to have.
Yep.
And, the Jubilee, the doctrine of the Jubilee in the Bible.
Yeah.
My whole ministry has revolved around the teaching of the God's final Jubilee. That's all about a kingdom. It's about properties and kingdoms.
Going back to the original owners.
Yeah. And so you gave me this outline, and I thought the 6 things here concerning, and your title is this: The Roads of Prophecy are converging as we come into the last days.
Yes.
And so
it doesn't matter what road of prophecy you would want to walk down. We could take a dozen people and assign them a different road of prophecy. Geopolitics, whether it's weather-related,
earthquakes,
political, pestilence, whatever road you want. And for the first time in history, we would all be converged together at this time.
In other words, when you take your area, let's say a professor says, all right, you're going to study this, you're going to study that. Yeah. By the time you get to where that study leads, it all comes to eventually a battle of Armageddon.
And all the roads of prophecy. If all I had was one, I would say, well, I'm not sure where we really are in God's timetable. But when you have all of them converging at the same point, boy, we are bumping up against.
And again, really, the battle of Armageddon is where it's all headed.
That's where it's all headed.
And it's all about a kingdom, isn't it?
We're headed into the Antichrist Kingdom, which is the 7-year period of time before the ultimate kingdom of the Lord. And all of the roads have brought us right here. We are at the verge of that Antichrist kingdom. Okay. All they need is the rapture and get us out of the way.
Well, tell you what, speaking about getting out of the way, let's get a little commercial out of the way.
Yes.
And then we'll get into this. We won't have to interrupt it. We're coming up to the final stretch of our 3 months time span here. And we need money.
We need a little more help. Get us over the line.
We're not quite there. We still need just a few $1,000s would get us going, keep us on the air. Yeah. So, folks, if you like what you hear here on these shows, if you enjoy our programs and you can help, go to the website and hit that donate button, or write a check, send it to us. You can go to the website and get that mailing address, or call the 800 number. You can get all the information by calling the 800 number. You can get the address, you can donate, whatever. So we need your help. We're a viewer-supported ministry. Yes. None of us gets any of the money. In fact, we have no salary here, Doc. And someday maybe we will, but right now we don't. So we have our own ministries on the side.
Yes.
So So let's, if you could help us, that would be great. And don't forget, we're also on the radio. You can go to the website, click on radio. You can find all the places we're on the radio across the country. And we're really trying to expand this thing and get out there as much as we can. Because, Doc, we believe
the roads have converged.
The roads are converging.
We're at the end.
We're at the end. You can see the sign, the stop signs up ahead.
Yep.
We just passed the warning sign.
Yep.
Warning, dangerous road ahead. That's where we are now.
We're down that road, as I often say, as you're traveling down the road, here comes another one that merges into it. And then it's another one merges into it until you're at a big place, and you're right there.
Called the Valley of Megiddo.
Yeah,
that's the big place.
That's where it's going to. That's the place where it's headed.
So let's jump into some of these. Of course, the top of the list here is Israel. In other words, Israel is prophetic
because everything prophecy-wise revolves around Israel. I told the folks where I spoke this morning, I said, you need to understand, if any nation, past, present, or future, has had or will have any involvement with Israel, they're mentioned in prophecy because it's all about Israel.
Yeah. And, all right, so they're in their land, which was huge.
Very prophetic.
M.R. DeHaan, his book, 1947, he wrote the book, his study guide on Revelation. I have it. He said in that book, it's almost humorous. He said, one day man will travel faster than the speed of sound. Yeah. That's laughable now.
Yeah.
He said one day man will go to the moon, 1947. Now he was 20 years off there, or actually less than that. But the third thing he said, which was even more important, one day Israel will be back in their land. And that happened a year later, in 1948.
Well, they're back in their land. Another very major prophetic sign of Israel is you'll speak your language again. And almost 1,800 years, the Hebrew tongue language was dead. It's been revived, and that's what they speak as. Because when they started coming back, all these people from all over the world, they couldn't communicate because they all spoke some kind of different language.
Yeah.
And so they finally said, wait a minute, this will be our language. And the Bible said that's what it would be.
I spoke with Michael Samuel Smith. He's an avid watcher of our program, a good friend of our ministry.
Very good friend.
I used to interview him a lot at Prosperity News. I think we did a show about the Hebrew language coming back and how they see a lot of those words are not Bible words. They had to get words for everything because it was lost to them.
But the Bible said it would happen. Another thing about Israel, the Bible says that in Hosea that the land would come back to life again as the people came back into the land.
Yep.
But the whole thing about Israel back in their land, man, is a fulfillment of Ezekiel chapter 36 and 37, because you can't finish the last 7 years of prophecy without having Israel back in her land again.
And Ezekiel 36 and 7, that's
the bringing Israel back into their land.
That's the story of the bones getting
in chapter 37, the steps of bringing them back again.
And of course, a big deal was 1967, right?
Oh yes, getting control of Jerusalem again, and then turn around and give the Temple Mount back to the UN. But anyway, yes, in 67, a very important year.
Yeah, and of course.
So it doesn't matter, some people say, well, 1917 or 18 or 1948 or 1960, where does the generation start and all of this? Well, it depends on what you use as a generation. It's amazing, different numbers will bring you to the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, how about, all right, number 2 on the list here. We're talking about roads, prophetic roads that all come to the same end.
Yes, they are.
Geopolitics. What do you mean by geopolitics? Explain that.
The geography of the world and the nations of the world are aligning themselves politically. You're watching the groups that the Bible said would formulate. You're watching the nations of Europe reconstitute themselves. Macron is calling on European Union to bring all our armies together into one army. If they did, they'd have the largest army in the world.
Yeah.
Right now, every nation's got their own.
Who's gonna control that?
Well,
army?
The Antichrist is going to control that.
Yeah.
And then you've got nations like China, like Russia. You're watching them in this Ukraine thing. You're watching them bring the the Islamic troops in with them in this battle. They got 16,000 Islamic troops working with them. Well, in Ezekiel 38, you got all these nations that are Islamic nations that are going to be partnered with Russia. You're watching these alignments take place in the world. China and China's place and dominance in the world, they're biding their time, and they're going to ride onto the stage at the end of the tribulation.
Now, you made the statement in a prior show that at the time a prophecy is given,
yes,
that when that prophecy comes to pass, those nations that were there at that time were going to be players.
I'm convinced that when God gave the prophecy, that he gave it to a specific, about a specific people group living in a specific geography. That's going to be fulfilled with those people's group in that geography. To verify that, Israel is brought back into her land again. And the prophecy of the fig tree that Luke talks about, and then in Luke he says, in all of the trees. In other words, when they divided up the Levant after World War I, what came about all of that, especially after World War II, was all of the nations that border Israel as we know them in their geography. Well, all of them have got some kind of prophecy against them.
Yeah.
And so God is bringing, and I believe that eastern Ukraine was originally the farthest west tip of the Scythian kingdom, which was the Magogs. And they're just bringing that territory back together again.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned here the kings of the east are rising. Explain that.
Well, there's more than one king because the Bible calls them kings of the east. And I think China, of course, we're watching North Korea again. He's out there telling everybody he's going to have a major nuclear program next week, I believe it is. He's going to blow up another one of them bombs out in the ocean.
Yeah.
You've got India. You've got these nations that are to the east. One of the problems is, Dan, that probably most of our viewers don't realize that there were other kingdoms outside of the four kingdoms in the image of Nebuchadnezzar.
Right.
Because everybody thinks they rule the world. The reason why the Bible refers to it as ruling the world, they ruled the world in which Israel lived.
Right.
Outside of that were many other kingdoms.
And how could you rule 1,000 miles away without technology? And
no. So what geopolitics is the alignment of the world prophetically. They're coming back into those that have prophecy.
Okay. All right. So Israel, geopolitics, the nations of the world fitting into their places. These, when you study these, they're all going to end at the same
They're going to end at the same place. You know, the Bible says, in Joel chapter 3, God said, I'm going to bring all of the nations that have parted my land.
Yeah.
In other words, anybody that's had any, whether it's physically or a vote at the UN, I mean, Japan's never had any physical access, but they voted against Israel in the UN. So he said anybody that's had a part in dividing Israel is going to have a national presence at the Battle of Armageddon.
Number 3 on your list here is financial.
Oh, boy. This is what's taking place right now. You're hearing about the Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and their plans of reconstituting the finances of the world, but they want to do more than just the finances. So what's happening over the last 2 years with the pestilence that we've dealt with? They've used that to crush economy, the mandates, this, that, and the other. Now they're going to use sanctions on Russia. Well, those sanctions they're not going to hurt Russia. Russia can sell her oil through China.
And what they're saying is this could cause us to lose the currency of the world.
That's exactly what's happening.
Because China is yoking up with Russia. That's
exactly what the globalists are behind this thing. The globalists because there's only, outside of our last president, there are only 2 leaders in the world that are non-globalist.
Now, this is shocking. I hope the viewers listen to this. Now, say this again.
There are only 2 leaders in the world that are non-globalists.
And we're not one of them, are we?
No, we're not one of them. Mr. Putin and Mr. Xi of China.
And I've said before, that's why they had to. That's why they hated
had to
Donald
get
Trump.
rid of.
They had to get rid of Trump because he's a nationalist.
He was a nationalist.
And still is.
Even one of the leaders, I don't remember her name, of Ukraine, was talking about how important the battle was here for the cause of the one world movement.
Yep. That's the Ukraine that said that.
The Ukraine, somebody in Ukraine. And so we're watching the financial system. The sanctions in Russia, against Russia, is not going to hurt Russia, but it sure hurt you at the gas pump and at the milk station.
So far, 3 college guys have been given their assignment. One guy is to study prophecy as it relates to Israel. This other young man over here is the geography of the world and how that relates to prophecy. Now we've got another guy. He's been given, you're to study the mark of the beast and the financial things has to do with prophecy. What you're saying is when they get to the end of it,
when they get their study done, they're standing at the same place.
It all comes out to the same end.
Yeah. And right, it is a financial system that they're working on. But in order to get there, they got to crush the financial system that exists.
And that's how they're going to get us into this.
And just this week, our own president had an executive order for a Fed coin or whatever they're going to call it.
Digital dollar.
A digital dollar to replace our paper dollar. Yeah?
Yep.
No, everything is moving its way. And whoever they are, the globalist elite up there, they're pulling all the strings and everybody's
They're probably
just
going to deposit some money in our account, too.
Well, they probably will.
And that'll be making everybody happy.
That'll be the bait that'll get everybody to sign on, not realizing they're going to end up with credit like China.
I hope the viewers understand the danger of getting out of cash and into a digital system only. Yep. They control everything. You can't just go buy something. Look, what happens when they say, well, you can only use them digital dollars for Walmart, and Target. You can't use
or
that
Amazon.
over here. You can't go buy a gun with that. You can't. See, so they're going to control you.
And I guarantee you that's what it'll come to. Yeah. Absolutely.
We saw up in Canada, they cut everybody's bank accounts off.
Yeah.
They can't do that with cash. Yeah. This is a pretty big deal. I hope people
It is a big deal. But by the time we get to the, or not we, but by the time the world gets to the middle of the tribulation, that's exactly what will exist.
That'll be the final. That doesn't mean it's not here before that, but it means it doesn't go into effect where you have to.
I'm convinced the system is already here that could easily be put into that place because it's a technology system.
Okay, well, there's another one here. So we got a 4th young man. He's been given the job of studying creation and calamities, and he's going to wind up at the same place. Explain what you mean by this.
The exponential rise of earthquakes. And if you take the earthquakes that are 6.0 and greater, there's not a day goes by without more than one of them. And the number of those has just exploded since 2012. But when you take the 12 largest, 8 point something, 9.0, we're talking huge earthquakes. There's 12 of those on record. It's amazing. 10 of them happened since 1948, the year that Israel became a nation again.
Wow.
And the Lord said one of the signs of the end times, he said, would be the rise of earthquakes in diverse places. And we're watching that. The number of deaths in relation to cataclysmic typhoons or tornadoes or whatever, it just continued to rise. And so it's a road that tells us we are approaching the very end.
So our 4th student was given the job of studying earthquakes and all this stuff. And when he gets to the end of his study and where it all leads, he finds that next to him is sitting the guy studying Israel's right there. Yeah. And the guy studying geopolitics is, hey, we're all at the same destination.
We're all at the same time. We're here together.
All right, so that's 4 of them. There's a 5th one. And I don't like this one, but this is very real to us today. Pestilences.
Yes. The rise of pestilence. Whether they are a mutation out of nature or more likely a mutation made in a laboratory, The rise of that in our world is, we spent 2 years with one of them, and I guarantee you they've got another one in the wings. They're basically already telling us that you need to take this particular shot in order to be able to be protected from the next and the next and the next. Wait a minute. You're telling me I need something for the next and the next? You've got something next? Oh, I'm sure they do. Yeah. No, the pestilences, not only that, but in the Middle East, all of the locust infestation last year. If you lived in Uganda, where we have a lot of ministry out of our church, can you imagine if you owned an acre, you could take care of your family? 2 acres gives you enough to take care of your family and have extra to sell and barter. Can you imagine within 15 minutes having lost your entire crop?
Yeah.
How are you going to feed your family?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Pestilence is a real thing.
And now we're hearing, of course, the biological labs, biolabs in the Ukraine, and of course, Wuhan, China.
And who knows how many others are working on the same things.
So as a young man is studying this for his prophecy lesson, he finds out that this also winds up at the same destination.
Same place.
And it's very possible, we talked about this in another show, it's very possible that the Ezekiel 38, 39 is going to involve biological warfare.
I don't see in our world today how it could not in some way.
And we talked about the fact that they're going to burn the weapons for 7 years. You just got to sit back and ask yourself, why? Why would you burn tanks?
How are you going to burn a tank up?
And what is really going on there? And it says with fire. Mm-hmm. And you know, fire is how they would cleanse disease.
How they would purge after
back in olden days, if there was a plague or something,
burn the whole house
down.
they'd
remember the blankets that they gave the Indians?
Yeah.
Our government did that. It's shocking. Gave them blankets that were exposed to disease, killed off a lot of Indians.
Yes.
Fire is how you get rid of that stuff.
Yeah.
It talks about they're going to bury the bodies for 7 months. Mm-hmm. So the 7 years
there will be thousands of them to bury, I guess, but still in our world today, with the machinery we have,
could that have something
dig
to do
a big
with
hole,
purifying the earth and the disease?
It seems like there's more to it. You know, when Ezekiel wrote it, there was no way for Ezekiel to be able to even comprehend mentally weaponry of 2022.
Right.
So he used terminology that to us at any era of time is an understand. Everybody understands a bow and arrow and a sword and all these things. That's why prophecy is written in such a way so that every generation has a general understanding of it.
Yep.
But he couldn't have understood what we have today.
All right. Well, there's one more on the list. We got one more student that was given an assignment to study prophecy. His area was the rise of the prophesied powers that are going to aid the Antichrist in rule.
Yes.
And I think you have Daniel 11 here.
Well, Daniel chapter 11, I believe it's 39 through 41. You're giving there basically 3 entities that are going to aid the Antichrist in dominance. You've got a God of forces. I think the God of forces is science and technology. These are gods that did not exist in Daniel's day.
Is it, so here we are. We're back to science.
We're back to science again.
And we've been hearing that for 2 years.
Yeah.
We're following the science.
We noticed recently with all the mandates dropping off how science has changed. But no, I don't think science has changed. But when Daniel wrote that, it's talking about a future time when the Antichrist is going to rule. And he's got 3 entities, 3 gods that's going to help him. The first one is the God of forces. And I think that's science and technology. There's not a facet of our world today that is not governed by technology.
Yeah.
You go to McDonald's, and if the computer's down...
They don't know how to make change.
Well, if the computer's down, you can't get anything.
Yeah.
You go to the gas station, if the computer's not working, you're not pumping gas. There's not, all of your medical information. It's electronic. There's not a facet. Most of the automobiles wouldn't start if the computers didn't work.
Right. Yep.
It's technology. Our lives are governed by the God of forces already. And then there's a God that's going to be supported or honored with gold and silver, all of the things of materialism. I think that's money and finance. As we know it today, did not exist in Daniel's day like we have it today.
Right.
The entire world is already interconnected electronically with their monies and finances. And so the third God that he talks about is a strange God. That's a God that's a foreign God. That's like what we would think, I call it globalism, because if you have we call them rogue nations, and we're doing this right now, we're putting sanctions on Russia. Well, that's a foreign God. That's a outside force that invades your territory and you have nothing you can do about it. These are the three gods that I believe are going to aid the Antichrist in the Antichrist Kingdom. And by the middle of it, technology will have taken him to the place where it can tie his economic system, his medical system, his food system, everything to one bit of a technology that's called the mark of the beast.
So, as we sit here and we gather these 6 students with their each assignment, and they've all done their study.
Yes.
What have we learned? Where are we at on this road?
I believe we're at the end of all things, as you often say.
Yeah.
We're at the verge of the Antichrist Kingdom. We're ready for the rapture.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't put a time on it, but I'm here to tell you we're close. And if our listeners are watching us, if they've never been born again, let me tell you, you need to get saved because time's running out.
It sure is.
We're that close to the tribulation days.
Yeah, folks, I would encourage you to get this book, The Kingdoms of Our Lord. It's really what it's all about.
Yes, what it's all about.
And everything you mentioned here is all revolves around kingdoms.
Yes.
And places and kings and leaders and all that and armies. It's all about kingdoms.
All about somebody wants to rule your life.
Yep. And boy, we can see that today.
Oh, it is, and it's not going to get better. What we're going through right now at the gas pump, the grocery store. My son-in-law is a tanker truck driver for a pilot. He was telling me how much fuel he carried. He's carrying almost $100,000 worth of fuel.
Yeah, they're going to
tanker.
need. My son does the same thing. They're going to need armed guards pretty soon.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
And the price, everything's going to go up. And I told the folks where I preached today, you need to become self-sufficient and use your God-given mind.
Well, there you have it, folks. That's where we're headed. We're on that road, and it's all coming together. So until next time, keep your eyes on them skies.